Hey everyone, Jim T. Graham with rcgroups.com, and I'm excited today to have an interview with Michael Wargo, who is, well, we'll let him explain his role in the new MX2 Extreme from Hobbyking. You might know Michael from his 3D section or his 3D thread that lives at the top of our 3D section on RC Groups. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's really nice to be here and talk to you.
I see that you're in your music room.
I am. I can see you're in your music room. That's why I decided to do this in my music room.
I wonder if our musical, well, let's talk about what you do. You make your living off your music. Is that correct?
I've been doing that since I was 16 years old. No, I own a few companies. I own an advertising agency. That's been my business for 30 years. But I started my life as a concert pianist and spent a lot of time doing that. Had a really, really good career through my 20s and used that to kind of launch my other career. You know, I was able to self-fund myself and stuff through some success in music as a pianist. I'm a jazz pianist by trade.
Gotcha. Which would be the trickiest piano style, you think?
I started with classical music. You know, I'm classically trained, but for the most part, I fell in love with jazz in my mid-20s and never looked back. And like I said, I've had the privilege of performing with just legendary jazz musicians and everything. I had a very fruitful career, and for the last 25 years or more, I've been just like a house pianist 4 nights a week at a big local Orlando hotel. 15 years at the last one, maybe 10 years to one before that kind of thing. I performed with a vocalist. Yeah.
So how did we get from doing that to flying RC airplanes?
Well, as a lot of the people who follow me know, I'm also a professional golfer. I've been competing on tour since I was 40. And I started playing golf right at 40 years old. I kind of spent my 30s building my companies, and I hurt my back and I couldn't compete for maybe 4 years. And through sheer boredom, I took up, flying airplanes. I just bought a little 3-channel Cub, kind of fell in love with it. And then I saw a pro pilot. I saw Rennie Ladinas, who flew for Extreme Flight, do aerobatics. And I was just riveted and then hooked. So about a year later, I got sponsored by PA and Precision Aerobatics, and from there, it just kind of became another real passion of mine.
You know what's interesting is Chris Henson, the owner of Extreme Flight, is also a phenomenal guitar player. I don't know if you've ever heard him play.
No, I talked to him at Joe Nall and stuff like that, and he said he was a guitar player and stuff like that.
He's out touring right now. He's got a band that does Pink Floyd. It's a Pink Floyd cover band, but it's like one of the top Pink Floyd cover bands in the country.
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't quite aware of all that, but
so you're flying a Cub, and then you so this is kind of what happened to me. I saw Kike in a VHS video. This is how long ago that I picked it up, and I was like, I need to learn how to do this. Talk about your first craft that you're like, I'm going to learn to 3D, and here's the plane that I'm going to do it with.
Oh, wow. It's a great question. Well, I started with the Cub, and, I was just landing it. And I remember my now ex-wife, saying to me, "Oh, God, you're going to get so into this." I'm like, no, this is just kind of fun. And boy, was she right. But I just joined a club because I really had no place to fly. I bought a proper plane after that little 3-channel. I mean, it only had a slider for a throttle kind of thing. It was really primitive. Flew on NiCad batteries. And
what was it? Do you remember the plane? Was it like a Hobby Lobby plane or something?
No, I think it was like it was some sort of E-flight in that genre.
Yeah.
So it's the Super Cub. I bet a lot of people remember this little thing. It still exists. I mean, it still flies, believe it or not.
Well, the number one thing you have to learn when you fly RC is how to land that plane. So I think that would be the one plane that would be best at that.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I really never crashed it or had a hard landing or a bad landing with it, So I thought, well, I can do this. That's what gave me a little bit of confidence. And then I bought an Ultra Stick, 30E.
Yep.
and I built that. And it was terrifying to fly it for the first time.
Yeah, it's different.
And yeah, and bringing that down, I shook for like 15 minutes afterwards. And that whole, I don't know, the endorphins really kicked in something that I would have never thought. I mean, I hear people say how scary it is, and I test fly a lot of turbine jets for people and stuff like that who are very skilled pilots, but still think they're going to shake and too badly to even take the thing off the ground until they get comfortable.
I think that's important for if you're a new pilot and you think you're the only person that shakes. I used to shake before I got to the airfield, like in the car about a block away, my hands would shake. And that's because I spent over a month building this airplane. And it was, I thought, if I crash this, I'm out of the hobby. I don't have any more planes, or any more money. So that's kind of where the beauty of these ready to fly planes, it's taken all of that off of me now.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. But after that, I joined a club, and then I saw, like I said, I saw a skilled 3D pilot fly, hovering like a big airplane, like I remember it was an 88-inch yak and stuff. So I went out and bought one of those, and again, flying that for the first time was terrifying, and trying tricks was terrifying, and just I don't know, I really got hooked fast. And
but bigger flies better. Did you find your bigger plane was easy? It did things slower?
Well, it was easier to take off and land and stuff like that because it was a little bigger and more docile. But doing the tricks was again terrifying.
Frightening.
And so I bought some electrics to practice with, and then a little E-Flight Sobre that ended up being the thing I learned to start to hover and do stuff like that. And then at one point, Precision Aerobatics saw a video I did of their Katana and put it on their website. And they offered me a sponsorship. And then, the next year I ended up, going to Seth and Jonal and doing in the noon shows. And all of a sudden I'm pretty wrapped up in it.
So let me ask you a question that I should have asked, and I should know the answer. How did you get that sticky at the top of the 3D forum?
I'm pretty sure you put it there.
Did I do that?
Yes, you did.
Very interesting. I'm going to go look into that. That thing's been there for years and years, right?
Well, I mean, the most popular thread on how to 3D, I think the reason you did it is the most popular thread on how to fly 3D was only like 80 pages over
so it was new.
8 or 9 years. And mine was at like 400 or 500, in a year and a half or so. It got really popular really quick.
So this thread, 2013. So it's definitely not new.
No, not anymore. No.
And let's
see. It's slowed down a lot over the years, but you can find it. But people can literally find anything they want to know about 3D somewhere on this thread. There are people. Now, again, it's not just me.
Right.
Everybody's sharing they're sharing their thoughts and their feelings on how to do things, because something like with golf, piano, or flying, people with similar skill levels have a much better perspective on a lot of things than, you and I are very familiar with music, but if you're talking about somebody, a beginner, you and I are saying, a rudimentary thing is a C chord. Well, to them, a chord is what you plug the instrument into the wall with, so it's really hard to relate to somebody who's just a complete novice. And there are people of all skill levels on there offering their opinions, and most of them are pretty savvy. And occasionally there's a kooky person on there, but like everything else.
And so let's say that you wanted to access that, but only wanted to learn how to do rolling Harrier.
Mm-hmm.
You can use this, search this thread. Let's see. This is kind of live here. So that would give you all the posts that were relating to the topic that you're really curious about.
It's full. And I've done probably 5 or 6 videos just on the rolling Harrier over the years, because that seems to be something everybody wants to learn, and it's so frustrating because there's so much feel involved.
But you can find that right here in the electric airplane 3D flying section.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're here to talk about today, everyone, is the brand new Hobbyking MX2 Extreme 30E 4S EPO 3D airplane. And this was recently released. And tell us about your role in this.
Well, there's 3 models now that Hobbyking's released that have my name on them. The last one was the Edge 540T that came out about a month and a half ago. But apart from that, they periodically send me planes to just, give some advice on how it flies or what to do to make it fly a little bit better. This particular one, they involved me very early and sent me a CNC prototype. And I got really a lot more involved in it, trying to get this thing lightened up. The EPO foam models, I mean, it's not that I don't like them. I enjoy flying them. They had the Voltigeur and others that flew pretty well. But they were like really good at the high energy stuff, real fast ailerons and carried a lot of energy into and momentum into the maneuvers. But as soon as you get down low and slow, they just don't do what I love to do the most. So what I did was just keep giving them ideas and ways to potentially lighten this thing up. And I don't know if I remember properly, but there were some issues with the elevator and placement and stuff like that, and servo placement that I definitely, had some input on, not to mention linkages, things like that to prevent blowback, making sure the servos were strong enough that the thing will actually do what it's supposed to do.
Right. And then how long
really
did all that?
Result.
Was that a long process or?
Yeah, it was. It was quite a while ago. It was a couple of years ago when all this started.
And then here she is in action. So it's a torque rolling, knife edging full.
Yeah. Look, like anything else, it takes skill to do some of the maneuvers, but having one that is a little better than others, I mean, it really helps you look good when the plane actually does what it's supposed to do. I've gotten some planes to fly, over the years that they're expecting it to do all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I really, really, really have to work at it, which this one I don't.
Gotcha. And a lot of that, of course, is in your input and the design of the plane, wing placement. I remember every plane I owned up to a certain point had coupling. So it would always tuck. And then one day I got my hands on, I think it was the Mojo. And it was the first real neutral airplane that kind of went where you actually pointed it. You didn't have to counter any inputs,
Right. This didn't require any coupling mixing. I always mix my planes to where you'll see a recent video I did on the on the little new Tundra plug and play, and I did some really fun aerobatics with it. And I mixed out all of the coupling tendencies, and boy, it was a knife edging full and stuff like that. The one thing I want to mention about, I come onto these videos and say, no, it flies really well and it 3Ds well. It does all these things well. There's something I just never talk about, but it's the truth, is that when you have an airplane that is not fighting you through these maneuvers, I've done a lot of videos, another MX2 for like years ago that, I had a lot of complaints that people said, I watched that darn video and, I can't do any of this stuff that you were doing with it, and the truth is, if it's an aircraft that takes a really skilled pilot, I mean, somebody who really, really, really knows how to do it, can get it to do it. That doesn't mean it's a good plane for somebody else and they'll be able to. And that's why I really work hard at, like with the Wargo signature models and this one, to make sure that not just I can do it or someone with the similar skill sets, that, somebody who orders this thing online, gets it, who's a modest 3D pilot. And if he can hover with one plane, he can hover with this one. And if he can rolling Harrier with one, he'll be able to do it with this one.
Gotcha.
And like I said, I cannot say that for every plane I've, flown, corporate videos for over the years.
I always liken that to Jimi Hendrix. You'll see Jimmy playing the guitar or SRV, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and you could pick the guitar up, but you're not going to make that music. You know, you got to have that skill set and be able to do that on any guitar. So you're saying you design your planes. So if you can do it on one, you can transfer your knowledge onto this one. It's not harder; it's easier.
Right. I mean, especially with the other ones, you know, that Wargo Yak and the Edge 540T and stuff like that. To be honest with you, I only wanted to. There were a lot of directions I could have gone in the models themselves, like that first Yak. I chose that model for a very specific reason, and that is I do so many videos on training. I wanted something that is crash resistant. Like this thing here, you can smack it into the ground, pick it up, and glue it back together if anything happened to it. The EPO is really easy to put back together. I wanted to develop some stuff that encourages everybody to go into the hobby and get into aerobatics. And everybody who's watching this channel today, there's one thing I want to tell everybody. You can do it. It's not as crazy as it looks.
You could literally
as dangerous as it looks.
Get this plane, go onto your thread, start out with the basics, you know, and then just learn. It's just like anything else. If you have the tools to learn how to start hovering or something like that, then you can move on to the next and the next and blow your own mind.
Yeah, exactly. I've done a lot of encouraging people to get into aerobatics videos. In fact, there's a series very recently that I'm in part 4 of 5-part series of trying to learn to be deliberate and aerobatic and stuff. I think people are just, especially some of the older garb who are used to just flying in circles, when they see the plane hovering and stopping and doing crazy landings, like or stuff like this with the plane going inverted and flying, you know, plummeting at the ground in orientations they are not used to. I've heard people say, you know, it looks like pure magic. You know, they can't wrap their head around it. But it's just not that hard once you. I'm not being dismissive.
Yeah,
it's, you know, but it's not as hard as it looks. They just have to be brave enough to take a little foamy and flip it upside down,
throw it around,
you know, and start not panicking. Like,
so
go ahead.
I don't know if you remember the earliest heritage of 3D when it was proclaimed that 3D was going to ruin the hobby.
Well, it did, I'm sure.
And well, yeah, it got people excited about the hobby. But literally, when I first started talking about 3D a lot, especially in the AMA magazine, it was not very popular. And the owner of, this is an old story, but it's one of my favorite 3D stories. The owner of Hobby Lobby International, the first company to ever sell electric foamies, was at the field with me. And I said, Mr. Martin, I want to show you. He said, Jim, show me this 3D stuff. I want to see it. So I built the plane. It was a profile plane, and I did all my tricks for him. And then I landed and I turned and I said, what do you think? And he said, that's not flying. It's blasphemy. I have no idea what you just did there, but don't do it again. And that was the hard reaction to 3D in the earliest days.
Well, you know, I think another thing I occasionally say about aerobatics and people who just seem a little reticent about it is, you know, once you learn aerobatics and you start getting a little more comfortable, especially 3D where the plane is stalled and things like that,
right?
You'll never fly a warbird the same way again. You'll be so much more comfortable and competent.
Right.
A non-aerobatic pilot's approach to landing is very different than mine. And I mean, I think everybody would be better at this hobby if they would just kind of push their envelope a little bit.
Well, it teaches you everything about washout, and then, like you said, you can take that over to what you would consider a very tricky warbird, and all your 3D skill sets makes, now you understand what's actually happening in the air, and you can not crash the plane. You know, you can actually fly it.
Yeah, if the plane actually accidentally gets out of an orientation that you're used to, which if the only thing you're used to is upright,
right?
You know, I've had a lot of people have me test fly their aircraft, and all of a sudden something really wonky happens. If the plane is inverted, it's coming towards me or something, I don't get confused.
Right.
And not getting confused is a pretty good skill in this hobby.
And remaining calm. So I have a theory after flying so many of these great flying 3D planes. Is what's your dog's name?
Actually, no, I had one here. Zoe. Yeah.
Zoe. I think that a properly trimmed out, and I mean with some low throws, nothing too radical, that you could fly a plane like this as a beginner plane and then use it to work your way into 3D. So instead of buying 3 planes, you might get away with buying just this one. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I had a discussion with Precision Aerobatics a while back on people are afraid to buy them because they're, I got to be like this expert 3D pilot. But my contention is these planes are easier to fly for a lot of reasons. Way better than going from a trainer to a warbird.
Yeah, like a P-51.
Right. So going from a trainer to a really light, very aerobatic airplane, as well as I do, it'll land easier. It flies easier. If you get a little out of orientation, it's way more controllable. I mean, the degree of control you have with an aircraft like that compared to a P-51 or something like that is crazy. It's night and day. On a scale of 1 to 10, your control with a P-51 is a 3, and these are 10s.
Right.
So if you are a beginner, as long as you don't set the throws really radical, or you do something on the order of being certain your expo is properly set. I mean, I would recommend an aerobatic plane as your second plane all day long. It's just like jumping from a trainer to a jet. A jet isn't hyper aerobatic, but it's harder to fly.
And if the real trick is feeling comfortable, if the plane is nice and smooth and docile, then the shaking and all those other things that are going to make you fly worse will subside, and then you can actually enjoy it, and that's the whole point.
Yeah, if you watch go online and watch some of your friends fly their warbirds and watch the landings, okay? And 5 out of 10 are pretty, pretty questionable.
Right, bouncy.
But watch any of my videos on landings and watch me land an aerobatic plane. It lands at almost 0 airspeed. Yeah. It's just like 2 miles an hour, and it just settles in. It's so easy because it slows down fast. The wing loading is dramatically different. So anyway, so
we have a beginner solution, intermediate solution based on expo, which I'm an expo guy. I'm not really a dual rate or anything like that. What I wanted to do is go over to the Hobbyking site just to look at some pricing, look at availability, and then show you why this is another great reason. $239, which is completely realistic, in this world. And you can check out the specs. But one thing I wanted to show off was that there are spare, you can buy a fuse, elevator, all the parts are here in case you rip one off, which you're probably going to do. And then I always say go to the field with 3 props, 1 on the plane and 2 extras. And that'll keep you going for, another hour while you're at the field.
The nylon props that are included with the model and the Hobbyking props like that are really durable. I'm not knocking APC. I used them for years and really like them and so on and so forth. But these tend to just, if you hit them on the ground, they just don't break.
And with that said, if you're new to 3D, it's all about getting as much air as you can over the surface. And 13 is 13. That's 13 inches of air over, and then 4 is kind of your paddle is either really flat or really thin. And so a 4 gives you a ton of torque, as torquey air over your plane.
Exactly.
So this is like the biggest prop I could imagine on an airplane this size.
You're right, and that is very intentional. Yeah, you get more air over the surfaces. We don't need speed. We just don't need it. One of the other things is that the motor is the right motor for this aircraft, and a lot of companies are putting really heavy motors on, and I think it throws the balance off because you have to counter that with more weight on the back. The thing flies 100 miles an hour, but when it starts to slow down, the flight characteristics change for the worst.
It's almost like gearing, shifting down into first, second, third, or fourth. And if your plane's not propped properly, it's like driving in fourth gear all the time. And these planes want to be driven in first and second gear.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if it depends on what you want to do with it. I mean, you can prop it down widthwise and put a little more pitch on it, and you can get some more speed out of it. But I don't recommend it for sure.
And the key word, or 2 words here, is in stock. So if this is something you're hot to buy, we all know that stock levels are tricky these days. So pull the trigger while you can. This is starting to sound a little bit like an infomercial, and that's not my goal. My goal is to simply talk about an awesome bird. And
well, hopefully people will enjoy this. I think it's a great plane for anybody who flies 3D. The same with the Wargo Edge. The Wargo Edge came out a month and a half ago or so. Unfortunately, it sold out in like 6 days. So
okay, good.
We're waiting to get some in stock.
Gotcha. Well, you can check out this airplane on RC Groups, and it is currently in the 3D flying section. Another way to find the article to get to the buy link and all that stuff is going to our magazine. And it is, I've been doing a lot of stories this week, so it's a little bit lower. It's right here. And you can check that out. And then one more thing I'll share again is this 3D how-to section by Michael. And that's in the 3D flying section at the very tippy top. It's always there. It's not hard to find.
It is an amazingly good thread. And I'm not saying that because because it's named after me. I do visit it all the time. And if you do have questions, I'll get on there and answer you when I can. But you'll also get a lot of other perspectives, not just mine. And I understand that my perspective is slightly different.
Sure.
I try to never be dismissive of the difficulty, although some say, well, it's easy. I understand that it's hard. But this thread is just loaded with nuggets just throughout the entire thread. Awesome. And every video I've ever produced on that is inside the thread. Sorry, I've got
to gotcha.
Light that's going on.
Let's look at one thing. Show attachments in this thread. This is I was showing this to someone the other day. You can look at everything that's ever been attached. Images, videos, the whole thing. Random photos.
I've done a lot of setup guides on how to mix, how to set it up. My setup guides are included on the owner's manuals. They're on Precision Aerobatics website. They're on Hobbyking's website. They're really popular if you want to set your plane up for 3D or in general. Nice. There is a file just called the Michael Wargo Setup Guide. And if you just get next to your plane, hold the radio in your hand and use this guide, your plane will be perfect.
You don't always find every resource needed like this. So this is pretty awesome for the aspiring 3D pilot.
Yeah, I'm telling you, and I'm not saying this is not, again, it's not a pat on my own back. I'm telling you that there was a lot of people contributing, well, with the amount of pages. I mean, it's got close to 1 million people visited it, that kind of thing. And if you have a question, somebody looks at it, they'll answer. And you'll get the information you're looking for. Generally, really good information too. Not just
9,000 replies and 788,000 views so far. Mm-hmm. Crazy.
So, yep. Well, thank you for putting the sticky up there, even though you don't remember you did that.
I have put up an awful lot of stickies. And thank you for all that great content, because really that's what the forums are all about. I was in a discussion the other day with somebody, like Facebook versus forums, and if that was on Facebook, all that content would be flying around and no one would ever be able to find it, And so the beauty is all that knowledge and all the things that you can glean from are right here, and they always will be. So it's awesome.
Well, truthfully, everything I've ever put on there, I don't type it unless if I don't exactly know 1,000% for sure, I don't publish it. I don't write it. Or I research it and then put it up there. I never want to come across as a know-it-all or anything like that. But for the most part, I've got a very cerebral approach to just about everything on this order. So I generally know what I'm talking about at the point where I type it in there.
Awesome. Well, you know where to find him now. So if you have a question, Michael, I want to thank you for your time and working on all these great ships with an eye for giving people planes that they can actually fly and work with.
And the other thing is to make sure that they're reliable. That's one thing that I want to plug Hobbyking over the last few years. For a while, their reputation wasn't sterling on. They're trying to give real budget airplanes, and they were struggling with their factories and stuff. And a few years ago, I put up a really big fuss over a couple of things, and maybe an evolution ago, they really put a big focus on quality, not accepting anything. So this plane is a really good quality aircraft, as well as most of the ones they're producing right now. I'm really proud of that they're really come around with a lot of that stuff.
The key to putting planes out like this is having people that know what they're flying and what needs to be done. And with guys like you and Stuart working inside of HK, that's how you get great planes like this in the Tundra and just really good birds.
Yep, I agree.
Well, thank you for your time, everyone. We've been talking to Michael Wargo, designer of many Hobbyking planes, and your 3D instructor in the 3D section. And maybe if you're down his way, you can listen to a little piano playing some night.
There you go.
Thank you, sir, for your time, and have a great weekend.
All right, take care.